My son, Aiden, 23, moved back with us upon graduating college as my husband wanted. My husband's original plan was to have Aiden live with us for free, but stay home and help with his disabled younger brother. However, Aiden started complaining about needing money and wanted to find a job. My husband was against this and even offered to double his allowance, but Aiden was growing tired of so he began looking for jobs here and there for over a year, but none of his job applications came through, so he'd just apply and they'd have yet to get back to him. We were confused by this till recently. I found out that my husband was behind all the job applications being cancelled. He'd wait till Aiden applied, then he'd proceed to cancel the application by impersonating him and using his email. I blew up at him for this, but his justification is that he's just trying to make sure that our younger son is cared for by Aiden and that Aiden has been a big help, and that getting a job will affect his care for his brother. I went ahead and rented an apartment for Aiden and told him to stay there till he finds a job and starts paying for it himself. Aiden was hurt upon knowing what his dad did. My husband was livid when he found out. He called me unhinged and said I was separating the boys and teaching Aiden to become selfish and care more about a job than his family. He also said it was a huge decision for me to rent an apartment without even running it with him. He's been giving me a hard time and calling me a terrible mother for encouraging Aiden to be selfish and self-centered. He said I needed to see and understand why he did what he did. Am I the idiot? I might be one for making this decision and spending money without my husband's approval. But my husband says that since he and I have health issues, then we could use Aiden's help. When I suggested outside help, my husband refused, saying he won't ask anything of anybody and that his son was his problem and no one else's. I used money from our joint account to pay for the rental apartment. My husband said it was wrong and a major waste of money since we consistently deal with medical bills. Not the idiot. Well, hubby says his son is his own problem, but is forcing it on Aiden and is teaching him he doesn't have a life besides taking care of his brother. Your husband is abusive to Aiden and honestly creepy in his manipulations and insistence on Aiden being Dobby, the house elf. A good thing you got Aiden out of there. At least he has one parent. I also don't understand what the long-term goal is here. What happens when the parents pass away or move into hospice care themselves? What if his brother ends up needing expensive professional care? Is Aiden supposed to just hope the government will support him? Or will a 30-plus-year-old with no job history magically get a high-paying job with great insurance to cover his and his brother's needs? Even with the tight job market, no one will take a chance on an adult with no job history, no sign of self-sufficiency, and no upkeep in skills. It would be challenging to start working life as a very mature adult. Not only is this abusive, but it's also criminally stupid and short-sighted. Stand your ground. Your husband either doesn't understand he's destroying both his sons' lives, or he just doesn't care. Can you imagine all the bridges that have been burned by this man? This 23-year-old cannot go apply at any of these jobs he's already applied to ever again. What does he tell them? My family's so full of drama and psychotic that my dad was the one who quit the application process for me. And imagine this guy's self-esteem when he's applied everywhere and nobody even calls him when everyone is hiring. He was probably wondering what was wrong with him, and it wasn't even him. Yeah, it actually is criminal to access someone else's email, especially if you're going to do things that hurt them with it. A 23-year-old cannot exist on an allowance, and he's not a de facto caretaker. Your husband seems unhinged and crazy. It's not Aiden's responsibility to care for his disabled brother at the expense of his own life. You did the right thing for your son. Let's do whatever you need to do in order to protect your son, and don't let your husband exploit or parentify him further. My sister is kind of a waste of skin. I love her, but I could make money betting against her decisions. Our mom set up a college fund for her. She didn't bother going. She had an opportunity to buy a house 15 years ago and decided to go on a trip around the world. She got pregnant in South Africa from some guy she was working with on a yacht. She didn't bother coming home until she was 5 months pregnant. She stayed for 4 years and then left again, but her son stayed with our mom. I was in school when she did this. My mom had to use my college fund to help raise my nephew. Financial aid, and completed college with only about $30,000 in loans. I moved out and moved to another city. I love my mom, but that kid is out of control and not my problem. My mother's recently been diagnosed with a condition that means that she'll very soon be unable to care for herself, much less my nephew. She called me to ask if I would be willing to accept guardianship of my nephew. I very politely said, heck no. No one else in the family is willing to take him either. The kid has burned a lot of bridges, at least one. Literally at my uncle's ranch. My mom is worried that he'll end up in foster care. I'm still bitter about going into debt because of my sister's decisions and my mom coddling her. I know the kid needs counseling and I love him, but I just can't find it in myself to provide that. I have a pretty great life, and I'm not interested in throwing a wrench into the gears. I've reached out to my nephew who's working in South America. She says she's getting her life together and cannot return now. My mom is telling me how important family is. She says she understands why I feel like I do, but she's still disappointed with me. My sister says I'm an idiot for not helping her and her son. Contributing my college fund against my will was enough. I could afford to take on the kid. If I get legal guardianship, I could put him on my health insurance and maybe get him counseling, but I'm just not interested in turning my life upside down. Not the idiot, and your sister can go kick rocks. Imagine the bloody cheek in abandoning your kid, then saying someone else is an idiot for not taking that kid in. I mean, the kid's mother is living, breathing, and working. That Ope's mom would literally try to cause Op more pain than make the sister pick up her own responsibility is insane. honestly, I cannot even wrap my head around that. It's not like this kid is an orphan. His mother is alive and well, living in another country and actively choosing not to come back and care for her own child in the wake of her mother's illness. She's one of the bigger idiots on here, and that's saying a lot. Why did your mom use your college fund and not your sister's? Oh, sister had spent it on traveling. So your sister is the failure and the one dumping him in the system, not you. Your mom is an idiot for guilt-tripping you for not taking responsibility for a child who has his own mother and father, and using how important family is while your sister doesn't give a darn. I feel awfully sorry for this kid, but don't take him in if you don't want to. It would make you unhappy as well as him. I female 18, live at home with my parents, and attend community college, so I can save up to transfer. I's my big sister, 21, also lives at home but goes to a real college nearby. Her words. I've been looking for a part-time job and asked my sister if the restaurant she waitresses at has any openings. She said maybe, but that was a few weeks ago and I never followed up. To the issue. She came to my room last week and asked if I wanted to get lunch with her, and I said sure. I assumed we'd just go through the drive-thru. So I wore fuzzy slippers, the outdoor kind, sweatpants, and a high school t-shirt, and my hair was kind of dirty in a bun. I wasn't expecting to see anyone. We pulled up to her restaurant, and I told her I wasn't really dressed for it. I wasn't really dressed for that, so could we eat somewhere else? She said not to worry about it, and we went in. She immediately went to say hi to her friend at the hostess stand and left me with her manager. I thought it was weird that the manager was standing in the front until she told them I was there for an interview. Apparently my sister did give me an interview, but thought it would be hilarious to embarrass me in front of her coworkers by catching me off guard. I was so shaken that I immediately said, Sorry. I wasn't expecting this, turned around and just left. At the time, my sister died laughing and didn't say much, but apparently she's now facing the consequences at work because her manager is really upset at her having wasted her time and thought what my sister did was unprofessional and not funny. I don't think she'll get fired, but she had her hours reduced in a formal write-up. Now my sister's blaming me for making her look bad by not going through with the interview. Her friends have called me mean names, making me feel horrible, but I'm so torn. I haven't told my parents yet because I'm really embarrassed, and I don't want to get in trouble. My friends are split between thinking I should have tried to be strong and finish the interview, but others are supportive of my decision. I don't know anymore. But the idiot. Your sister attempted to humiliate you for a laugh, and her boss reacted predictably to her terrible, unprofessional behavior. Actions meet consequences. Agreed. As a manager, even if Ope didn't left, I would have been upset that sis brought someone to me unprepared and looking like a mess. No matter what Ope did, sis would look bad in the boss's eyes. She only made it worse by confirming it was intentional with the laughter. Like from me, would take it from a write-up straight to firing her. anything, the boss is too forgiving by only cutting hours. Your sister's 21 years old and got a thrill out of trying to humiliate you at her workplace. She seems like a very mean and petty person, and to me also pathetic, but dangerous enough to not want to be anywhere near her. I hope she has some redeeming qualities. I don't think you need to worry about whether you should have stayed or not. You did what you had to do, and it was in your right. Your sister's behavior, though, is unacceptable, and having consequences is only fair. Yeah, you didn't get the referrer in trouble. She got herself in trouble. She's trying to victimize herself so she doesn't have to acknowledge that she's a crappy human being. She was just cruel and malicious. I definitely inform your parents about it, even if they can't do anything about it since you're both adults. Letting her get away with bad behavior by hiding it from them will never help her and will only enable her behavior. My boyfriend Matt and I have been together for about 10 months now, and he moved in with me about 4 to 5 months ago. I own my flat, and I have a somewhat well-paying job. Matt just went back to school part-time, meanwhile working a lower-paying job. He pays for half the food, utility, and dates. I like to travel a lot, but Matt can't really afford it, so I mostly go with my friends, but he came with us for a little winter holiday after Christmas. After we returned, one of my friends, David, who was with us too, came to me saying he wanted to talk to me about Matt. David told me that he observed Matt during our vacation and that what I did to him wasn't okay. He saw Matt struggling to pay for things, often checking if he had enough money. David eventually said that it was wrong of me to expect Matt to pay for half of everything, since I make so much more than him, and the fair thing would be to divide things based on our income percentages. Like I pay for 70% of the items, and Matt only pays for 30% instead of 50-50. David told me that I'm not allowing Matt to save money of his own, trapping him in our relationship since Matt couldn't afford to live alone, and that's financially abusive. I just laughed in David's face. That's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I didn't really try to refute anything he was saying because none of it made any sense. David got really offended, angry, and disappointed, or I don't know what. It was hard to read because he said he'd expected better of me. He came to me with a genuine concern, wanting to be helpful, and he didn't expect my immature reaction to it. It has been a couple of days since this, and I still can't wrap my head around it. I'm thinking maybe I should apologize to David for laughing at him, as he really did look concerned. But what the heck was he even thinking about? Am I the idiot? I made one point to David after laughing. Matt lives with me for free. I only asked for half the utilities, which is less than €50 a month. I, on the other hand, have a pretty big mortgage. To this, David said that Matt lived with his parents before, without having to pay rent, so that's irrelevant. And I felt like there wasn't much more to be said. What? You aren't married to him, so you're not liable to financially support him. He's not even paying rent. He's an adult that made a big boy decision to move out of his parents. Now, if he's paying more than he can afford, then accept that he can't afford this lifestyle and needs to move back home. The financial abuse accusation was beyond unreasonable. Not the idiot, Opie. And this, David said that Matt lived with his parents before, is utter hogwash. Opie is not Matt's mother. Exactly. If he wasn't living with you, he'd probably be in a worse position. He's currently living rent-free. That's the sacrifice you make when you cut back hours to go back to study. Again, his decision. David is showing his entitlement and inserting himself where he has no right or relevance. He needs to get over himself. You are the idiot. He's your friend. And laughing in his face is an idiot move. You could have responded much better. And you could have also made it clear that the household split is not 50-50 if you wanted to have a real discussion with your friend, or just politely tell him that your finances are private and not up for discussion. And not knowing the specifics of the vacation, if it puts your partner in an obviously uncomfortable situation, you could have adjusted as appropriate for that specific situation, including choosing less expensive activities if your boyfriend was struggling. My son passed away unexpectedly. It's been hard. Of my 3 children, he was the one who remained close to me into adulthood. I have no problem with my other 2 children. They just never really reach out anymore. My son left behind 2 dogs. I don't have the energy to care for 2 dogs, so I decided to keep the older one because it requires less care. My coworker has a soft spot for animals. She's young and can walk the puppy and give him the care he needs to have a happy life. I dropped the puppy off at her house on Tuesday. This was a nice decision because this coworker is trustworthy, and I can still arrange puppy playdates when I have the time. It's not like the dog will never be seen again by this family. Well, when my son's girlfriend learned that I had rehomed the dog, she was angry. She told me my son would never approve of this. She told me she was like a mother to the dog and that it would be lost without her. She used harsh words and told me that I should have offered the dog to her first. My son's girlfriend has been a mess since his passing, and I thought adding a puppy to the mix would just push her over the edge. Then, my son lived with me, so it's not like she was living with the dogs and I snatched them up. They rarely spent time at my house together. I was with the dogs every day and more involved in their lives. I didn't do this randomly. It was being discussed. I just guess she didn't take me seriously. Not the idiot. If the dogs lived with you, then they were yours before being your son's girlfriends. It's up to you to know what to do with the dogs. And if you estimated that the puppy would be better off with your colleague, then you're right. A girlfriend is a girlfriend. They weren't married and didn't live together, which makes her a stranger to you. I wouldn't leave my deceased son's dog to a stranger either. You are the idiot. So this poor girl loses the person she loved and their dog. Yeah, I'd be furious. Explain to your coworker and ask for the dog back to give to the girlfriend. You made assumptions about what this woman needed instead of just asking her. She already had a bond with the dog, and you don't get to decide what's too much for her. My goodness, you judged her for grieving, calling her a mess. Of course she's a mess. Her partner died. It was very inconsiderate on your part. I imagine she feels like she lost part of him again. You should apologize and offer to give her the dog. It will be awkward telling your colleague, but even a fairly normal person would understand.